Hi, this is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to another episode of Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of November 19th, 2018. We are recording at the amazing Moonyard Recording Studio in beautiful Tacoma, Washington. Yeah, you need a Moonyard theme.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
So we have Thanksgiving coming up, and therefore we are calling today's episode Thankscycling.
I like it. Thankscycling. Welcome to the turkey cycling event.
That's right. Not like a bicycling, though.
Oh, is that not what you meant?
No, sorry. That would be very different, though, and fun, probably.
Hilarious.
So, who do we have with us today? Mitch Ratcliffe, our Earth911 publisher. Mitch, where are you today?
Well, I'm working from home and checking in with the gang.
Perfect. We're also joined today by our writers, Earth911 writers, Sarah Lozanova and Trey Granger. Sarah, where are you today?
I am in windy mid-coast Maine right now.
Oh, how's the weather there?
It's cold. I think we might be getting a nor'easter, but
Really?
Ooh.
yeah, it's
Is that
super
early?
windy right now. It does seem a bit early. It's been below freezing all day, and we've gotten snow nearby already.
Wow.
Oh, I bet your kids are sort of anxious, though, thinking if it snows heavily, maybe no more school for the week.
Yeah, that's their favorite part about the snow.
But, and Trey, where are you today?
I'm not sure I should say after everyone's talking about their horrible weather. I'm actually in Honolulu, Hawaii, which I forgot is an amazingly green city. So kudos to Honolulu.
Great. And
Nice,
so
nice.
make us jealous.
And how many degrees warmer is it?
Yeah. How nice is it there?
It was actually 85 yesterday.
Man.
Sounds
Sounds
nice.
really good. Yeah, in Tacoma right now, normally our weather does obviously get bad in November, and normally we get some big storms in November, so I think we're all sort of waiting to see. But right now it's just normal rainy. Nothing very exciting. So before we get into our Thankscycling stories, let's talk about recent Earth911 surveys. Mitch, what did we survey recently?
Well, we're planning what we're going to be writing about in 2019. And what we did last week was ask people what they'd like to know more about. So we asked a whole series of questions, basically, about what people want to learn. Would they like to know about adopting an earth-friendly diet, eliminating toxins and dirty air, adding solar, adding water heating, things like that? Quite a long list. And the top three things that Earthlings want to know about in 2019 are, first, at 49%, how to adopt an earth-friendly diet, which I think is going to be a huge opportunity for those people to change their carbon footprint. So we're going to definitely have more about that. We've been aiming to expose more information about your decisions when you're standing at the store thinking about what to buy, and hopefully we'll be able to help with that.
We need some good recipes for, sort of alternative products, so that, because I never really know what to make with, tofu, rice and beans. You can't eat that every night. So,
yeah, I've been thinking, because mostly I eat things from Trader Joe's in various combinations. And just putting the right kinds of food together to make something tasty is a big challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the second most popular?
So eliminating toxins and dirty air from the home came in at 44%. And that's something that Sarah in particular has spent a lot of time on. So we'll be asking her to do more. And then the final one, even though we found in the survey last week that 50% of people in our readership are already using or actively in the process of getting solar on their home, 41% of the respondents said that they want to add solar power and do energy audits and create savings at home. So that's another area we'll be focusing on. And I'm excited because these are all great topics that there's a lot of things that we can share and hopefully get the Earthlings talking back and sharing more.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's interesting for two reasons. I mean, one, yeah, these are great topics and it'll help you build, your sort of profile for next year. But also, we've been covering some of these. So that kind of tells me that we have been covering some things that people are interested in. And that's nice, too. So what is the survey that's up right now that people can answer?
Good Lord, I can't even remember.
That's okay. I have it right in front of me. It is, do you prefer plastic or paper food packaging?
I posted that on social this morning, and I should know that right off the top of my head.
You've been a little busy, though.
Well, so, and the survey this time is a series of degrees. So do you use plastic at all? Do you use it and recycle it effectively? Do you use it and throw it away? We want to get a sense of how people not only prefer it, but what they do with it.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about the interviews that you've conducted that we have up on the website right now.
Yeah, we have had some really fascinating conversations with people. And the first one that I wanted to talk about is with Chris Wilke of Puget Soundkeepers, which is part of Waterkeepers, a national network of organizations dedicated to preserving local water, groundwater, and lake and seawater. And Chris was part of a lawsuit asking the Washington State Pollution Control Hearings Board to regulate concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. CAFOs are the big cattle feed operations, pork feed operations, and so forth, that have massive manure ponds. And a lot of people are aware of the fact that during Hurricane Florence, a number of manure ponds were breached and caused very widespread pollution. But they also often leach into the groundwater, and that was what this lawsuit was about. Unfortunately, the state ruled that the regulations weren't necessary, and so there's going to be an ongoing challenge to that decision with the Washington State Department of Ecology. But we talked also about what CAFOs contribute to in terms of pollution and human impacts, and these things are not good. The manure and other, particularly the nitrates, get into the groundwater and can cause cardiovascular disease, reproductive and developmental problems, and blue baby syndrome, which is a form of cyanosis that strikes a baby and they turn blue. So we're hopeful that this will be overturned in the future. Chris and his network of environmental groups here in Washington will be continuing to fight it, and you can learn how to get involved on the show.
Good.
The other conversation we had was with Marc Choyt. He is the founder of Reflective Jewelry, and he's actually one of the few fair trade jewelers in the United States. Fair trade being in the same sense that coffee is a fair trade, is sourced from small farms that are acting responsibly. And he's been in this industry for about 20 years, trying to figure out how to bring fair trade to jewelry stores around the country. And unfortunately, he's run into a lot of resistance from the industry, including the diamond industry trying to prevent people from refusing to buy diamonds because of their implications in conflicts. And in fact, they still are, in many cases, being mined in areas with conflict. So it's a fascinating conversation about his long experience with trying to bring this more transparent and sustainable approach to the jewelry industry, and particularly what questions you should ask your jeweler in order to understand what you're putting on your finger, because you could be putting a wedding ring on that was mined by somebody literally working in slavery, using a diamond, or that had a diamond that was from a conflict region, and that doesn't mean what you want it to mean.
No,
and I think Marc's great point was, if you're going to put something on your body, it should be aligned with your values.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is an interesting interview. We'll also be talking with Zest Labs coming up shortly, and they will talk with us about their systems that they've developed for streamlining and modernizing fresh food distribution. We wanted to have some more information about avoiding food waste on the website as part of our leading up to and enjoying Thankscycling.
Yeah, and we'll next Friday also have an interview with Leslie Field, who's the founder of Ice911, which is doing some really interesting research about how to restore Arctic ice.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, then, so much information on the website. But let's talk about some of the stories. Let's talk about Thankscycling. And I thought we'd start with Sarah Lozanova has a really great story up on the website, 7 thankworthy DIY Thanksgiving decoration projects. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about those projects and whether you're doing any of them this year for your home.
Yeah, when I wrote this article, I was just looking for fun ways that people can create decorations, but without so much waste. Because so many decorations just end up in the recycling bin or the garbage can. So one of the ones that I think is really fun is to create an edible centerpiece. And so you can do this. I've done it in the past with a turkey. So you take different veggies and you put a turkey face on it, and it's just really fun. And my kids actually get really into helping me with these kinds of things.
I like the pickle. I like the pickle feathers.
Yeah, right. Another thing that is great is just to have a theme of gratitude with some of these projects, and because I think Thanksgiving is just such a great time to remember what we're grateful for. So I've also made a gratitude tree before, where I get branches from outside and create leaves, and then people can write down things that they're thankful for. And I've made place cards out of pine cones.
Yeah, I like that.
I've had my kids create decorations because they'll get really excited, if I say, hey, can you make a turkey name cards for everyone or things like that. And then one of the last ideas that I featured is a candle jar. And it's also really fun. And you can gather fall leaves and dry them out, press them, and then put them on a mason jar and with glue on the outside so you don't create a fire hazard. And these are really beautiful. And then you can put a candle inside, or if you create a handle on the jar, like with a 20 gauge wire, it can turn into a lantern. So I've also organized like lantern walks where kids and adults can walk around with candles outside, which they tend to stay lit because they're in the jar, and it can be a fun time of year to do it because it gets dark so early.
I think those are really great ideas. I love the pictures of the leaves over the mason jars with the candles inside. I think those look really beautiful.
Yeah, it creates such wonderful colors, especially when you can find some bright red and bright orange leaves.
I think it's a good idea, too. If you've got really small children, Thanksgiving is kind of a long day. And, if you're busy cooking in the kitchen, then having some things that they can work on as projects is probably a really good idea.
And kids like to be helpful and useful. And then it also gets them a lot of attention when the guests arrive and realize how much work they've put into decorating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I also think that's how kids learn to be a participant in the household and in their society is they start in the home doing these kinds of projects for people who are coming over.
I think so, too.
And depending on the ages of the kids, it can be hard to involve them in cooking. If you're cooking for a group, you're kind of running around the kitchen and there can be burn hazards. But
yeah.
But these are all pretty safe decoration ideas.
Yeah, I thought they were really good. We had another story up I just wanted to mention on, and I think Mitch, you mentioned in our last episode or the one before, using pumpkins and squash that you may have used as decoration for Halloween. You can turn them into candles by hollowing them out and filling them with beeswax. And the instructions are up on the website. And that's another really creative and lovely way of decorating for the holidays.
Yeah, we've got a number of stories up now about that. So not just for Thanksgiving, but going into Christmas as well.
Yeah, it's just great. Well, let's talk a little bit about Thankscycling and all of the food. One of the things we've talked about in the past is sort of our bad national habit of food waste. How do you go about making your Thanksgiving plan so that you're choosing the best items and also sort of avoiding some of the problems? And I guess the first starting place is let's talk about healthy eating. And Trey, did you want to tell us a little bit about swapping out less desirable items for better items?
Yeah, I think it's very timely considering that poll we just heard about with the number one request was more diet type stories. First, a quick shout out to the author of this story, Lisa. I didn't write it, but she did a great job of outlining some great opportunities to make a healthier Thanksgiving dinner this year. And obviously the most important one we're going to think about when we think about Thanksgiving is the turkey. People often think, USDA organic is going to be the best you can buy. There's actually a bunch of other terms you should look for when you're buying that turkey, because it will influence how the turkey was raised and therefore the quality of the meat. One thing to look for is pasture raised. which will indicate that the turkeys were raised outside instead of inside. There's also a certified humane, which means the turkey was not used with antibiotics. So it's going to be less of a concern about what you are digesting with that meat. And then the best one we would recommend is what's called animal welfare approved. This means you can't cut off the beak. There's no allowing the turkey to eat other meat or other antibiotics. So it really will make sure the turkey is as healthy as possible before you serve it to your guests. There also are vegetarian options as well. I mean, I personally have had vegetarian turkeys. They, especially if you make things with them like sauces, they taste just as good. And then look for those non-GMOs, especially because when we're talking about vegetarian products, there's a possibility of adding in genetically modified organisms. Try to look for ones that are GMO free. Mm-hmm.
I thought the suggestion to check PETA's vegan starter kit was a good one too, because they had it actually helps you get your first vegan meal made.
Absolutely. And moving right on to when we're talking about the stuffing, obviously one of the big ingredients there is bread. Look for that whole grain bread if you possibly can, and try to find that 100% whole wheat. There are ones that are wheat flour or unbleached wheat flour. But you want to look for that whole grain. And again, look for that non-GMO. In regards to vegetables, try to find organic. One thing I wasn't aware of, so I learned something fun from this article. There's actually a 5-digit and a 4-digit code for organic vegetables. The 5-digit indicates that it's non-GMO, and the 4-digit it might be a little less expensive, but they don't have those limit of pesticides that you really want for your vegetables. So look for a 5-digit USDA organic produce. And the last thing we'll talk about is cookware. Obviously, you have to cook these turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes and all these other items for Thanksgiving. Look for the non-stick cookware. Avoid that Teflon brand because what happens when they make that is they use what's called perfluorochemical, which is PFC. And you just want to avoid that if possible. It's likely a carcinogen, so especially as it gets heated up. So try to just find the stainless steel, the cast iron, your classic cookwares, even glass and ceramics are very good.
Well, that's good. That's all good advice. And kind of emphasizes, too, the idea that, do a little pre-planning, do a little thinking ahead of time. And, think about things that, that are important to you in terms of the food you're buying and your preparation.
Pre-cycling for Thankscycling.
So you
pre-cycle your Thankscycling.
Such a good idea. So
go ahead,
Sarah.
I often try to go to the farmer's market too. And that's a great way to do some pre-planning because you can see what's there, buy as much produce that's local and organic. They might even have things like turkey as well or bread, and then fill in the rest from the local grocery store as needed.
Yeah, that's great. That's great because then you get a chance to talk to people too who might have, good recipes or might be able to tell you, what's particularly good right now. Well, let's talk about avoiding food waste during Thanksgiving. We have an article on the website, 12 Creative Ways to Avoid Food Waste During Thanksgiving. It is a really good article. It is chock full of information. Now, I will give you a little caveat. It's from a couple of years ago, so some of the applications that it mentions, you're going to want to check out. There was one that's mentioned that I found that I couldn't find on the computer, but it's a really good article.
But we updated all of those, so I'm sorry. We'll fix that.
No, well, I couldn't find the Food Loop app that was mentioned, and it may just be that I wasn't searching for it properly.
Okay.
But
check it out.
But otherwise, everything was great. So shopping and planning for the meal. Sarah, you've talked about going to the farmer's market to start and then the grocery store, but how do you kind of plan around trying to make sure you don't overdo it? That's always a challenge that I have.
I think getting a really specific head count is good for meals, so then you don't end up double buying just to be safe. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I do anytime I cook a big meal is I look at what I already have. So if I have a whole bunch of potatoes, then maybe I'll make 2 potato dishes. Or if there's a bunch of greens I'm trying to use up from the garden, then I'll make a big green salad. So I think just trying to use up what you have on hand, and especially some of those harder to use ingredients that you might need to buy for something, like maybe heavy cream, which it calls for just a dash, but then you end up with a carton of it.
Yep.
I think sometimes just planning for that, saying, after this, I'll make such and such next week to use this up, can also be really helpful.
Oh, that's a really good idea. There's a note in the article, too, of check the clearance grocery section. So, if you've gone to the farmer's market, you're going to the grocery store, you can, some markets have a section that is sort of the, I call the last chance shelf. And it has, produce that is really ready. It's very ripe, and it's either it sells it today or it's going to be chucked in the bin tomorrow. And that can be, if you can find the produce that you want from there, then you're sort of saving that from going into the landfill.
Yeah, and the thing about American food waste that you have to keep in mind is that on average, we waste 40% of our food. But I think if you step back and look at your Thanksgiving dinner before and after, that's probably our most wasteful day. So the pre-planning is incredibly important. The other thing that the article talks about is what to do with your leftover food, not only in terms of making meals yourself, but if before Thanksgiving you identify a local food distribution organization like City Harvest or Ample Harvest, or find one locally that isn't in our list, you can plan to take some food that evening or the next morning over there and really make a difference in somebody else's life too.
Yeah, I thought that was really a very smart suggestion, was sort of, think through including, what groups might be able to take your items that you have left over. And one of the apps that's mentioned, or website called Big Oven, it's great. It has a page where you can put in 3 ingredients that you have, and it'll generate recipes for you to use. So there's some really good helpers there. There's also a couple of food waste apps that were mentioned, Crop Mobster and Spoiler Alert, that looked really good. And they also suggested posting your leftovers to local groups, either if you have a local Buy Nothing group in your area. I've seen people share out, hey, we had a pizza party tonight. I've got 3 pizzas left over. Is anyone interested? And they get snapped up right away. There's also an app called Olio, O-L-I-O, that apparently, will locate some local food sharing options too.
Yeah, I've used that one.
Have you?
That's a nice app.
How does it work?
It shows you what's nearby, very much like our stuff.
Good.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, we had a Thanksgiving dinner last year, and we had so many leftovers that we had a repeat the next night, and we still had some leftovers. But that was a great way just to use them up while they were still fresh and appealing.
Well, and because we're doing Thanksgiving, we should be sharing our thankfulness with others. I think that's really the heart of this holiday, and we can restore it to some extent by making these kinds of plans.
When all else fails, too, I think it's easier for me because I live in a rural area, but backyard chickens are a great way to use up extra food, and they do eat a lot of food scraps, like a lot of vegetable peels or squash or bread in moderation, but a lot of foods chickens will eat, and find it, it's a great way to reduce waste.
Yeah, I have a friend who has I think she just has four hens, and she likes to, when she does pet sitting for us, she'll take the leftover cat food from our picky cats and feed that to her chickens, and they love it, and it's great not to have that going, down the sink.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. The article also mentions, see if your local zoo or if there's a farm nearby that can use food scraps. I know I handled an issue a few years ago when I was working with the state ethics board of a teacher over at a community college on the east side of our state who was in their food management program, and he would take all of the scraps from the student cafeteria home and feed them to his pigs. And then as part of the food program, when he had a full-size pig, he would bring it back, and the students would learn how to butcher a hog. So it was sort of a nice cycle of, the students' food back to the pigs, the pig back to the students, and it all worked out pretty well.
People need to understand the Food Network. That's such a good object lesson.
Yeah, it really is. Well, let's talk about one item in particular. Trey, tell us about recycling cooking oil.
And will you be deep frying your turkey in Honolulu?
Oh, good question.
I will not. I'll be going out for Thanksgiving this year, so I'll hopefully be avoiding a lot of the waste concerns. The restaurant I go to will hopefully be good about recycling and composting their leftover materials. But definitely an important thing to remember when you are cooking, especially if you are deep frying your turkey. This is going to be a time where you're using a lot more oil than you typically would in the kitchen. And cooking oil, a lot of people might think to pour it down the drain.
Yeah.
You definitely want to avoid that. That's actually the number one cause of clogged sewer pipes. And this is definitely not the time of year you want to have to call a plumber out, because if you're hoping to take a shower and you can't get the everything's backed up because of the clogged pipes, that's definitely going to be something you want to avoid. Yep. So you want to collect the oil in a separate bin. I usually use a coffee can because they're very sturdy and can collect a lot of material. And they'll actually coagulate and solidify over time, so you don't have to worry about that material. But you can take it. Many communities actually right after Thanksgiving have cooking oil collection sites to take advantage of. And then you also, if it has dried up, you are able in many communities to throw it in the garbage.
I wonder, I've never attempted to, and I don't think I ever will attempt to deep fry a turkey, but you must use like gallons of oil.
Have
you done it, Mitch?
Yeah, it's about a gallon. It's about a gallon.
Have you done that? I've seen pictures of it, but I've never seen it in person.
I've never done it myself, but I've been at Thanksgivings where I have seen it happen, and I've seen it both go very well, and I've seen a turkey explode.
Wow.
It wasn't thawed.
Oh, so it was frozen inside still?
Yeah, you have to be absolutely sure that the turkey is not frozen. It has to be at room temperature. You are going to have problems. Yeah,
it's just more risk than I want to take on when cooking, I think.
Being burned to death is not my idea of a good Thankscycling.
Not a good Thankscycling event at all.
No.
Have you eaten?
What is great about recycling the oil, though, is you can turn it into biodiesel. So it actually becomes trucks.
Oh, that's excellent.
We should definitely be recycling it, but I flaming turkey is scary.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about how it tastes, though. Is it good? It
tastes great. When you do it right, it's delicious. It's moist. It's wonderful.
Wow.
One thing I have had is turducken, which I would not recommend. The turkey duck chicken.
Oh, and why would you not recommend it?
It's a lot more show than actual taste.
Oh, is it dry?
It just, you can't taste the difference between the three birds, and I feel like you're paying a lot more for it.
Yeah.
It's just marketing.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea, but yeah, I could see that. Well, those are the stories that I wanted us to mention, but with Thankscycling, soon after comes shopping season.
Yes, indeed.
So,
in fact, I think some 12 to 14 hours after you finish dinner, you will be considering shopping.
Yeah. So what are some thoughts on Black Friday and shopping and alternatives?
Trey, you had some thoughts on the benefits of using Cyber Monday. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage people. There are some amazing deals every year. In fact, we saw around 2011 was when Cyber Monday started becoming just as popular as Black Friday. Cyber Monday is, of course, the Monday after Thanksgiving, where all these online companies, Amazon, and then the manufacturers like Samsung and Apple will have special deals for your holiday shopping, so you can avoid the lines, the gas use, and have things sent directly to your gift receivers or receivees. So it's a really great way to shop.
That's excellent advice. And we have many stories on our website about recycling the shipping material that your packages will come with. Well, my final thought was try to do something positive also for your Thankscycling day. Take a walk, connect with a friend, try a new recipe, check out volunteer needs at your local food bank if that's not something you normally do. Maybe send some money to help with famine relief. Enjoy a favorite movie. I just think it's a great holiday for taking a moment and reflecting back on all of the things that we have to be thankful for.
and all the things that we can recycle and that we can plan to reduce our use of. Let's think of it as the moment during the year that we're going to make some changes.
That sounds good. Mindful thanks cycling.
Mindful thanks cycling.
Well, we have a couple of Earthling questions this week. Mitch, Candace in Iowa asks, can hair be recycled?
Well, in fact, hair can be reused rather than recycled. So the hair is something that maybe a lot of people don't think about recycling or using again. But 370,000 hair salons in the U.S. are generating at least 1 pound of hair every day. That means there's a ton of hair out there, actually 135 million pounds. And it can be used for a variety of things. And the most obvious and I think the most important for a lot of folks is wigs for patients who are going through chemotherapy or other treatments that will cause them to lose their hair. That ability to put on something that allows you to feel and look natural is really important to a lot of folks. And you can do that by reaching out to Make You Smile. It's a service of Children's Hospital, for instance. There are also a number of other Wigs for Kids and Locks of Love are 2 other sites that you can check out. An interesting one, and this one is an application that you can see in use in oil cleanups, is you can use hair in oil booms. They leave out to collect and gather an oil spill in the ocean or in a lake. So that's a really interesting one. Ottimats, Ottimats is a company that will produce that, and you can send your hair, and they work with a company a charity called Matter of Trust. You can also use your hair as plant food in your own garden.
Really?
They retain water a lot better than peat moss, and of course it's free. The other thing is the proteins from hair enrich the soil, so that's an interesting one.
That is interesting, finally, but doesn't that kind of creep you out? I mean, I don't.
Why?
I think if it was maybe if you cut your hair maybe
use it
if
on
you
the rhododendrons
and
and salvia corn.
Yeah, because I just wouldn't want like big blobs of hair in the yard. I think that would be concerning.
I think you would want to grind it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But I like the protein.
To deal with your anxiety about hair in the yard.
Okay.
When you mentioned the Matters of Trust earlier, fun fact, back in 2010, when that Horizon oil spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico, Earth911 employees actually had a hair drive. I personally donated about 6 inches of hair. I grew my hair out for once, and we donated it all to help clean up that oil spill. So it's a great organization.
Oh, that's really good.
That's great. So the last thing you can use hair for is apparel, for clothing. And I actually remember when I was a kid, I had a great aunt who collected poodle hair, and she would make sweaters out of poodle hair, which I think is illegal in some states still. But Indiana. And with human hair, you can actually have somebody take your hair and turn it into a textile. It's generally used in special installations or special forms of clothing. A lot of it's used in costuming.
Oh, yeah.
Lady Gaga, for instance, has worn a hair ensemble. And we've also seen it on display at the Royal Academy of Art in Piccadilly Square in London. So human hair can be part of an artwork if you take it to the right place.
Well, they used to have all those Victorian hair brooches and things like that where they would braid together bits of hair from loved ones into a jewelry item. But it's kind of fallen out of favor. That
feels like a very 1870s kind of thing to say.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm wearing some hair jewelry today.
Yes, a memento.
Yes. I don't think people grow their hair as long anymore either.
No, probably not. Well,
we did have another Earthling question.
Yeah, what was the other one?
So Arun in Santa Clara says that he has some produce boxes that are waxed cardboard. Not sure where he got them, but are they recyclable? And Trey, why didn't you talk about that? Because I know that you know the compound or hybrid paper problem pretty well.
Yeah, so basically the reason why these cardboard boxes are waxed is because they are stored in refrigerators. You'll see them often if you go to Costco and you go to the produce section where the food needs to be cooled down. It'll prevent the paper from getting soggy or wet, if you will. It just basically what means is the corrugated cardboard has been lined with what's called polyethylene plastic to prevent it from getting soggy. There was a strong rise in the collection of these materials back about 2 or 3 years ago. We're still not sure what the recent China material ban will have an effect on this market because they were primarily going to China. So we don't know yet. It's one of those materials that's kind of in flux right now. In Santa Clara, they probably do take them curbside because California is very progressive. We just don't know if that's going to be changing in the very near future.
Yeah, in fact, when we sent them the search results, they did have a couple of places that take them. But you also made a point. It's not really wax. It's a form of petroleum.
Correct.
So that's interesting. We should change. Should we not refer to it as waxed cardboard, or is that simply the term of art for the industry?
It's more what consumers would know it as. A lot of people think it's waxed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so that's the answer, Arun. You can probably have it done even in your curbside program, and we hope you got our email responding to that question.
Good. Well, any other items before we wrap up today?
I think everybody should have a great Thanksgiving and a great Thankscycling.
I think that's an excellent plan. Well,
and then, of course, shop cyber so that you reduce your footprint.
Right. And you avoid all the crowds.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Okay. Well, everyone enjoy your Thanksgiving and your Thankscycling. If you have any suggestions or questions for us, send us an email at feedback@earth911.com. And you can listen to us, as always, on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and, of course, at our earth911.com website. And we'll see you next time.
And if you like the show, make sure you share the podcast with everybody.
Yeah.
Have a great Thanksgiving, folks.